I have spent many years of my life in the study of this subject and written several books. The subject of ilmu akhir zaman, or Islamic eschatology. This book probably qualifies as a textbook on Islamic eschatology, Jerusalem and the Quran. And we now have it as well in Bahasa. As a result of my study of Islamic eschatology, I have come to the conclusion that we now live in a world in which, if you are not faithful in your worship of Allah and faithfully following Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, then you will be worshipping Dajjal. There is no third option. I have come to the conclusion that the architect of the modern age is Dajjal. And I have come to the conclusion that most of mankind are already worshipping him. Meaning they have submitted to him. For example, Al-Azhar University does not teach international monetary economics. No. And the Darul Uloom that produce your ulama, they don't teach international monetary economics. And so how? Tell me how can your Maulana or your Mufti or your Sheikh or your Ustad or your whatever he is, how can he give fatwa concerning paper currency when he has not studied international monetary economics? They didn't have paper money in the time of the books of fiqh. Huh? Well, I have studied international monetary economics at 2 universities. And on the basis of my profound study of the subject, I have come to the conclusion that this paper currency is bogus, it's fraudulent, and it's haram. And you'll be surprised how many American academics and European academics agree with me. The only people who cannot agree with me are our scholars of Islam. And so Dajjal today controls the world of money. I have come to the conclusion that the modern secular state is the creation of Dajjal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares in the Quran that He is Al-Malik. And in political terminology, that means the sovereignty belongs to Him. Sovereignty belongs to Him. And today you now have a creature called the modern secular state. And those who defend it have not even studied sufficient political science to understand its genesis, its origin. And the modern secular state, which has embraced the whole world, declares that no, sovereignty does not belong to Allah. Sovereignty now belongs to the state. Well, whoever wants to accept that and believe in it and act upon it should have the freedom to do so. And when they go to the grave, they must be prepared for the consequences of that. That's all. But the rest of us would say, no. We want to remain faithful to Allah and to His Messenger. And so in our hearts, we long for the return of the Khilafah. The Khilafah state, which recognizes Allah's sovereignty. This is our heart. In your heart, you may pledge allegiance to that state. In our heart, we pledge allegiance to the Khalifa. That's the economic aspect, that's the monetary aspect, that's the political aspect. But Dajjal is testing us in other ways as well. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that the last people to come out to Dajjal would be women. And a man would have to return to his home. and tie down, meaning coercively restrain his wife, his sister, his daughter, to protect them from being seduced by the Dajjal. We recognize that to be the modern feminist, Western feminist revolution, which is now seeking to establish its base in Muslim society as well. We know, we recognize that feminist revolution when it comes. The last people to come out of the Dajjal will be women. How would you recognize it? He said women would be dressed and would yet be naked. So when you see women dressed and yet naked, there's the evidence. These are the last people to come out of the Dajjal. Some people would be annoyed with the Prophet ﷺ for speaking like this. Yes. He said that women would dress like men. So you see them with a jacket and a trousers, and if you go to McDonald's, you see them with a tie as well. And some people would be annoyed with the Prophet. Yes, annoyed with him for exposing this fraud. Why would women want to dress like men? Why? They don't know. So I have to tell them why. The answer is Dajjal wants to disrupt and overturn, turn upside down the functional role of men and women in society. Allah ordained one thing, and mankind recognized it all through history, that men had a functional role in society different from women. That men were supposed to work and to maintain women, and that men were supposed to guard and protect women. And as a consequence of which women were obliged to be obedient. Obedient to their husbands, obedient to their guardians. Dajjal contests that. Dajjal does not want to hear anything about women being obedient to their husbands. No, that belongs to an old age that's gone. This is the new age. This is an age of enlightenment. This is an age where there is no discrimination. And so women don't have to be obedient to their husbands. Wake up to the modern world. Which one? The modern age of Dajjal. And in this modern age, a woman must have the freedom to pursue any activity she wants to pursue. Anything a man does, a woman should have the freedom to do it. And so women assume the functional role of men in society. And when they do that, it has calamitous consequences for marriage and for the family. Calamitous consequences. If we had enough time, we would have been able to take up the subject of marriage and give you the perspective from Islam, give you the philosophy of gender in Islam before turning to the institution of marriage and its functions. But we don't have that time in the short time we have left. Is it time for the azan now? Shall we have the azan and then continue, or shall we, what shall we do? Continue, okay. He said that men would dress like women. 1400 years ago he said that. And of course the first thing that a man has to do, but why would men want to dress like women? Is it to assume the functional role of women in society? Or is it to attract another man? Is it that he's prophesying that this age that glitters like gold is going to culminate with men marrying men and getting a marriage certificate. And that is the ultimate achievement of modern Western Dajjal civilization. And then women would marry women. That is your progress. The first thing that a man would have to do if he wants to dress like a woman is to shave off the beard. That's the first thing he has to do. Whether it's a big growth or whether it's a small growth, it's still a beard. Why did Allah place the beard on the face of the male? There are two answers. The first, of course, is that you'll be able to distinguish from a distance the male from the female. It's a divine wisdom. The divine wisdom. The second reason, of course, you know it, don't you? So children can play with the beard. Huh? And all of mankind kept the beard all through history until Dajjal struck with his civilization. Modern Western civilization took off the beard, and now every civilized male who wants to get promotion in his job, who wants to reach the top, every civilized male who wants to look clean must shave off his beard. Because if you keep a beard, you're dirty. That's the brainwashing that now passes for civilization in this godless age of ignorance. More than that, it's not just that you're clean when you shave off. It's the corollary that if you have a beard, you're a terrorist. And so there is an attack which has been launched on the male-female relationship, which is, of course, the foundation of marriage. Marriage is between a man and a woman. And in the marriage between a man and a woman, Allah explains at the beginning of Surah An-Nisa, the first ayah, وَبَثَّ مِنْهُمَا رِجَالًا كَثِيرًا وَالنِّسَاءَ, that the purpose of marriage, purpose of marriage as explained by He who created you from a drop of sperm, and in whose hand is your life. In this verse, He says the purpose of marriage is children, procreation, so that mankind will survive. If you are to have children, how can a marriage of a man with a man produce children? How can a marriage of a woman with a woman produce children? And yet there's a tomorrow which is coming when every single government will have to bow. They'll have to bow before the UN and before the IMF and before the World Bank and before this and that and the other. And they will have to enact legislation in every single Muslim country to legalize the marriage of a man with a man. It's coming. You don't believe me? Well, just wait and see. They're bowed in everything else so far. So they're going to bow in this as well and prostrate. But marriage in Islam is between a man and a woman so children can be born. It's so simple. Why should we bow? Why should we bow to those who are seeking to get us to worship them rather than to Allah? And when you marry, Allah speaks of marriage as an institution that is meant for Jannah. For Jannah. Because the first marriage that took place was when Allah created from Adam alayhi salam, He created his spouse, Hawa alayhi salam. And then He said to both of them, Uskun anta wa zawjuka al-jannah. go and dwell in paradise. And so the very essence of marriage is something that belongs to paradise, and hence something that is spiritual. And in Surah Ar-Rum, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about marriage. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ, and amongst his signs is this: أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, that he is created for you from amongst your very mates, your very selves. He has created your mates, your spouses. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, that you might dwell with them in a state of sukoon. Sukoon is peace and contentment and tranquility. There are things in life which money cannot buy, and sukoon is one of them. And so marriage is for paradise. And in paradise, this is what you get, sukoon. And if you marry here in Allah's name, and you live in accordance with Allah's law, then you get a piece of paradise right here on earth. Because you're marrying in Allah's name, and you're living with her to please Allah.